Hello everyone, I am Muhammad Irfan and this video is brought to you by Mavio. Follow us on social media and let's connect and build together. Today we will be looking into predictive modeling and patient outcomes. So we will be looking into different algorithms, we will be training different machine learning and deep learning models and comparing these models, and we will also be looking into different factors on the basis of which we will choose our model for prediction in clinical data science. So let's get into it. So first let's understand what clinical risk scores are and how they're important to us as clinical data scientists. So they are weighted clinical rules, they are numerical indices which are used to estimate patient prognosis and mortality. There are different types of risk scores like Charlson Comorbidity Index, which predicts a 10-year mortality for patients with various chronic disorders. Then there is Elixhauser risk scores, which is a more comprehensive method than CCI, Charlson Comorbidity Index, and it is used for predicting hospital resource use and in-hospital mortality. But to us as machine learning engineer and as clinical data scientists, these risk scores are important for prediction because they are numerical values, and machine learning algorithms, they understand numerical values better. So now let's look into standard comparative baselines. These are some baseline risk scores that we use. First, we have the CCI, Charlson Comorbidity Index, which its primary focus is 10-year mortality, and its clinical application is that chronic disease management and longitudinal care planning. Then we have the Elixhauser, which is a more comprehensive analysis, and its primary focus is hospital outcomes and resource allocation, length of stay, and actual risk prediction. These are its clinical applications. Then there is this other one in EWS2. Its primary focus is acute deterioration, and its clinical application is that standardized assessment for physiological patient decline, regularized regression, and EHR. Okay, so now we are getting into the prediction part. In electronic health records, the data is high dimensional and it often leads to overfitting because the data is so complex that when we train a regression model or a classification model for that matter, if we train those models on that data, it often leads to overfitting, which means that the model understands the training data so well that it captures all the noise, even the outliers, and thus it does not do better on unseen data. So, to tackle this problem of overfitting, we use a technique called regularization, which is basically to penalize a model's complexity to ensure generalization and avoid sensitivity to outlier patient records. So, for example, if we have some patients in our training data who show very abnormal behavior, so we want our model to treat those patients as noise, as outliers. We don't want to train our models on those few records. So because generalization, a generalized model performs better on unseen data, so we use regularization for that. There are two types of regularization we use according to the scenario. First, we have the L1 regularization, which we use when there are a lot of there are lots of features, and some of these features are of no importance to our prediction. So we will use L1 regularization. What it will do is that it will basically zero out zero out all the non-important features, and our model will be trained on the important features only. So it just identifies the most significant clinical markers or features in our data sets and zero out the rest. Then if there is a scenario in which we have lots of features, but some of those features are of less importance and some are of more importance. So in this scenario, we cannot just ignore zero out the less important features, but we want our model to treat them as less important. So in that case, we will use RIG or L2 regularization, which basically shrinks instead of zeroing out, it shrinks some features, and it is also useful, effective to handle multicollinearity, which is common in highly correlated clinical data. So these types of regularization will be used. We will be using them. Okay, now to the models that we will be training. First, we have the gradient boosting machines. This is the baseline statistical model. They are basically ensemble mechanism in which we will build a decision tree, a base decision tree, and then sequentially, one after another, we will be building other trees with each new tree correcting errors from the previous ones. So basically, from start, we will start with one decision tree and we will calculate the residues, the errors that tree made during the decisions, and then we will sequentially make one tree after another, and each succeeding tree will correct the errors from the previous one. So, tabular efficiency. Gradient boosting machines are very good with tabular data and very good with non-linear complex relationships, which are common in electronic health records. Then the implementations. XGBoost and LightGBM, these are two variants of gradient boosting machines, and they are extensively used in machine learning normally in clinical data science is the baseline models for prediction. Then there is deep learning. One specific model that we will use when in clinical data science is TabNet, which is basically a deep learning architecture specifically designed for structured tabular data. So TabNet is actually designed for tabular data, and our EHR data is almost all tabular complex non-linear data. So therefore TabNet works very good. Is It's a very effective model. It uses sequential attention to choose relevant features at each reasoning step. So it uses the sequential attention from deep learning, and it combines the interpretability of trees with end-to-end learning of neural networks. So it uses the good points of deep learning and that of machine learning, and it combines them, and that's why it is the most effective model for EHR tabular data. Because in deep learning there is this end-to-end learning neural networks, but the problem with deep learning is that it's a black box. Most of the deep learning models are black box. We do not know, we cannot interpret the results, the predictions of a deep learning model. But on the other hand, we can interpret the decisions of machine learning models, but they are less effective. Their performance is worse, you can say, than deep learning models. So, what TabNet does is that it combines the interpretability of trees, which are machine learning models, with the end to end learning of neural networks, which are deep learnings. So, it is superior for large scale clinical data sets with complex patterns. So that was TabNet. There are other deep learning models when we do not need interpretability so much. In some situation, we can use RNNs, which are recurrent neural networks for patient trajectories. They are used in time-based EHR modeling. EHR data is inherently a sequence of events over time, not just a static snapshot. So we know that the health data is a stream data. It is continuously flowing. We are continuously getting these, for example, vitals, etc. So RNNs and LSTMs are designed to remember previous states, for example, declining vitals. So its application is that it can predict sudden onset events like sepsis or cardiac arrest. So for example, if a patient's condition is degrading, then our model will tell us, our model will warn us before something bad happens like cardiac arrest or sepsis. So it is a great tool for intervention, and in this case we don't need interpretability because this is an emergency scenario. So RNNs and LSTMs are great for these kind of predictions. Then strategic model selection. So now that we've discussed about some models, how do we select the best model for our clinical data science prediction? So there are some factors to be considered. First, we have performance. Obviously, in every prediction, we want to predict correctly, especially in clinical data because performance is critical. So deep learning models like TabNet, RNN often yields higher area for complex data sets. So area under receiver operating curve, that is the evaluation metric with us. So they yield higher area under receiver operating curve for complex data sets. But the problem with excluding TabNet, the problem with other deep learning models like RNNs and LSTMs is that they are black box of information. We do not know what's going on inside. How did they predict this result? And in clinical dataset, we need interpretability, which is the second factor. Simple risk scores are easy to explain at the bedside for immediate intervention. So we need models that can tell us why this state is, why did they predict this thing. So they are important for immediate intervention. And machine learning models are very good at it. And also TabNet is also very good at interpretability. It is very interpretable model. So what is our decision framework? Choosing the right model depends on the clinical use case, research accuracy versus bedside utility. So what is our use case? If we're going for research accuracy, we will be choosing deep learning models like RNNs, TabNet, LSTMs, etc. And if we want bedside utility, we will be choosing simple risk scores, simple decision tree models, and also TabNet because it is good with interpretability. Then the evaluating discrimination or evaluation metrics, quantifying how well our models separate clinical cohorts into risk categories. So there are some evaluation metrics that we will use. First is area under receiver operating curve, the standard metric for overall model separation. So area under receiver operating curve tells us how well our model has separated the classes from positive and negative. Then we have area under precision recall curve, and this is a critical metric for imbalanced clinical outcomes. It tells us the performance of our model on rare cases like inpatient mortality and specific readmissions, etc. So if we have imbalanced data, we will use area under precision recall curve. This metric will tell us how our model is performing on these rare events. And the validation framework is that we train different models like baseline machine learning models like XGBoost, and then deep learning models like TabNet, and we compare their performance across stratified patient groups using EHR data. Next, we have model interpretability. So as we discussed before, that model interpretability and clinical data science is very important, bridging the black box gap. So we know that clinicians need to know why a model flagged a patient before taking clinical action, because they need to know the reason behind why a model predicted a certain case. So there are two things. First, we have the shape values, which are basically it quantifies the contribution of each feature. For example, the number of previous admissions to an individual score. So it basically gives an importance value, a numerical importance value to each feature, that in this prediction this feature was important or not important. So we have that idea. So this is the numerical kind of. Okay, next we have model interpretability. So as we discussed before, that in clinical data science, model interpretability is very important. Without it, clinicians cannot take actions. Clinicians need to know why a model flagged a patient before taking a clinical action. So for that we use shape values, which quantifies the contribution of each feature. For example, number of previous admissions to an individual's risk scores. So it scores each feature by its importance to the prediction. And by doing that, we can take actions identifying modifiable risk factors such as physiological levels to guide clinical intervention. Okay, this is our case study. We will be training a model on 30-day readmission prediction. The goal is to predict if a patient will return to the hospital within 30 days of their initial discharge date. So we will do feature engineering. We will calculate clinical indices like CCI alongside lab results and medication history, and we will be training different models like a baseline XGBoost and then a deep learning model like TabNet. And we will also check the explainability of these models using a shape-based dashboard to visualize patient risk drivers for clinician review. So we can then use these infrastructure for scaling large EHR training. We can scale this with Vertex AI or AWS SageMaker pipelines. We can register the models for version control to ensure safety, rollback capabilities for underperforming models. So in production level, we will need these things. For infrastructure, we will use Vertex AI or SageMaker pipelines, and model registry is also important, and also audit trials, logging every prediction for medical, legal compliance, and clinical review. So these are the things that will be important for production level. Next, so in conclusion, this is in this lecture we just discussed the models that we use normally in clinical data science, and now let's get into the practical part of this lecture. So after that, we do a little bit of data cleaning. We remove some unnecessary noisy columns, and we map the ICD-9 codes to clinical categories. What we could have done here is to we could have mapped this into the Charlson Comorbidity Index, now that I think about it, but this is alright as well. Then we label and code the class labels, and we split the data, and we assign weight to the classes to tackle that problem of imbalanced data. Okay, this gives an error, but then we train the XGBoost model and the TabNet model. I've trained that before, so we don't have to do that again. And after that, we will evaluate the model using the area under the curve. So this is how both the model performed. We can see that the XGB did a little bit better on all three class labels. That is because the data is very simple. It's not that complex. So mostly on a very complex stream data, stream EHR records, TabNet will obviously outperform XGB, but this is a simple data, so both have almost the same performance. And now these are the shape values of the most important features. They are visualized here, and these are the F1 scores and the recall values, etc. So this was it for this lecture.